I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Director Dickman, would you please read our vision statement?
Absolutely. Education, our vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Dickman. Before we get started with our showcase, I wanted to note that there had been originally a public hearing for the district-wide innovative calendar scheduled for this meeting, and that has been canceled and will be rescheduled, and an appropriate notice will be published in the Quad City Times sometime in the near future. We do have a different public hearing that will still be held tonight, and that's the public hearing on the district-wide security camera phase 2 project. Just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. We'll move on with the showcase.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're showcasing West High School tonight, and I call upon Associate Principal Matt Hassick to come forward. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Matt Hassick. I'm Associate Principal at West High School. I bring with me a couple of teachers, Lori Blocker and Aaron Cousins, and they will introduce their students. We're going to share some things that we're doing at West with Chromebooks and Google Apps for Education. I do want to thank a couple people who were instrumental in getting this for us at West High School, because this wasn't something that happened overnight. Last year, we visited one of our feeder schools who, as a pilot, had Chromebooks in the school. Lori Blocker wrote a grant for Chromebooks for West High School, which we have now had in the school for about a month. Gary Sloat has been tremendous in making sure that the high schools have wireless at all the high schools. And in making sure that Google Chrome has been installed on all the computers, has allowed students access to work on documents from anywhere, which has taken us from having 4 labs where students would have to go to and sign up for 130 teachers to try and get lab time in those 4 labs. We now have a grant that have 5 mobile carts, so we've more than doubled our number of people that we can reach. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to the teachers. Mr. Cousins.
All right, thank you. Good evening. I'm Aaron Cousins, and I teach World Geography and AP Human Geography. And I brought along my buddy Evan and Cole, and we're going to talk to you about Google Drive, which is part of the Google Apps system for education. We have used the Chromebooks twice in our AP Human Geography class, once for a religion project and then once for a folk culture project. We examined folk cultures from around the world. But we use Google Drive on a daily basis. I put all of my PowerPoints on Google Drive so they have access to them nightly. I put a schedule for the unit on Google Drive so there are no games. They know what's coming. They know what to read at night, what work to do. I also put review sheets for the exams that Evan and another student worked on collaboratively, which is fine. It's a good move. But I'll let Evan show you an example of one of the projects that we created, and then they'll both talk to you about the great things about Google Drive. So here's Evan.
Hi. Okay, so as he said, one of the projects that we did was about religion, and my group was assigned Hinduism. So we went to the library and we were working on the Chromebooks, and we all had these 4 sections, and we had 4 people in my group, so each one of us had a certain section, and we all made separate PowerPoints to do that. And when we were all finished with that, they all shared it with me, and then I put it into one big PowerPoint. And because that they already had all their information that they were assigned, since they had it all done, it was very easy for me to just do copy and paste and put it in there. And I added some transitions, and when we went to present it in the class, everyone knew what they were supposed to talk about. So I talked about like my topic, and then the next person would talk about theirs. We all knew what we were going to talk about, and we all knew how to transition and stuff, because since we were doing it at the since we were working on it at the same time, we were talking about who's going to speak first, who's going to go next, what they're going to talk about. And yeah, so it ended up being 15 slides, something like that. It was very long, and we got a very good grade on it. And another thing that I'd like to talk about is, like he said, my friend Josh and I, we were working on a study guide that we had for a big test that was coming up. It covered 4 chapters. So 2 nights before and then the night before, we were working on the exam review that Mr. Cousins put on the drive. It just had like the topics that we were supposed to look at. It didn't have any answers or anything. So what we did is we broke down every single one, every single topic. There were 32, 36, something like that. Every single one we broke down, and we put all the main points, and then we described the points of that main topic. And the review ended up being 11 pages long, when it originally what he shared with us was 1 page. So then we had an 11-page study guide to work on and look at before the test, and we both ended up getting A's, and he beat me by 1 point, but but that's okay. And our plans is for the next one that we're going to have, Mr. Cousins is going to share another review sheet, and what we want to do with that is we want to do the same thing. We're going to break down every point and go and explain it and stuff. But last time we just shared it it was just Josh and I that could look at it. But next time we want to share it with everyone in our class so that everyone has the same resource, so that we all will hopefully do better on the test. And yeah.
So you can like decide from right at that point that you want to allow a certain number of people to look at that work, right?
Yeah, you can choose whom to share it with, and yeah, it's very helpful. Okay. So if you just,
So there's a button that you can click to share, and we have a closed bubble currently. We can only share with people within the district. So when I go to share a document, or if Evan wants to share a document, he can just type in someone's name in the invite box. And
it's like if I wanted to share it with Cole, I'd just type in Cole, and Cole Watt speech would pop up right here. I'd click his name, and then I'd click share and save, and it'd go straight to him. And now he would be able to access it. And you can also choose if he can edit it, can comment, and just be able to view, which it's just kind of like a security thing, but yeah.
we can talk about how your project and to share.
So just to go off the point of being able to like share things and work collaboratively on them at the same time, when my group was assigned for the same project, we had about 5 people because someone missed a day and someone came back a day, so we ended up with a bunch of extra people. And what we were able to do was we split, right at the start, we split up like who had what part, and one person created it and then they shared it with each of us. And because of that, we were able to each just get on one slide of the presentation and fill in our part, instead of like a year ago we would have had to all like crowd around one computer and argue about what type of font or what type of theme to use on the PowerPoint.
One other point about the drive, it's more than just like an assessment tool or a management tool. I've put various news articles on the drive for them to read and to comment on. I've put video clips that I've clipped off of YouTube that they've been able to watch. So it's a great tool to push the curriculum. It's more than just the basics of content. We're able to use the power of the web now to access stuff that we haven't been able to access before. It's a great tool, and we thank you. And now Mrs. Blocker is going to talk to you about Chromebooks.
And the drive. Hi, I'm Lori Blocker, and I teach language arts in the 9th grade academy at West High School. And I have Josiah here and Mackenzie. These students have had the opportunity to use the Chromebooks in class every day. which has proven very, very beneficial to us, especially in the language arts department. I just want to send these around to you in case you haven't seen them yet, just so you can kind of get a feel for them. They're not any different from a regular laptop, really. They're a netbook, but the price point is fabulous. So just so you can kind of take a look at what they look like. Right now, Josiah is logging on, so we can show you one example of what we've done so far with these Chromebooks. As Mr. Hassig indicated, we've only had them since approximately September 19th. So they haven't had them very long, but they've had the opportunity to really collaborate with each other. And for me, being a language arts teacher, being able to communicate with me easily, and one of our major standards in the language arts area is revision, and in providing revision and feedback to our students to become better writers. And so as soon as he pulls that up, I can show you how the drive is nice for that revision, and let them kind of talk to you about how we collaborate between student and teacher, and then also among the students.
So the biggest issue is really the savings in cost versus a netbook or a laptop.
Well, it's what the district has approved for us to use the Chromebook, yeah, and they're a price point of about $280. Is that approximately right? Yeah. So I don't know about the cost of other things so much. It's what the district approved, but if you price that out to something like a tablet, I mean, you really get a lot of bang for your buck. And the big thing is that the district has provided us with Google Apps for Education, which I can't even explain how powerful and free that is. So this is Josiah's paragraph that he worked on. And I haven't graded his completely yet, but if once I was finished grading it, I would put his rubric on the bottom and provide him with a grade. But Josiah, if you could go to the comment section and kind of show what we do there. So anytime I see something on Josiah's paragraph, either at the beginning or in the middle, anytime during class or after class, next day, I can comment on what it is that he's doing well, what it is he needs to fix. And so, Josiah, if you could go to File and Revision History on the left-hand side for us. The fantastic part, and this just happens to be a Google document, you can see the revision history that we've done from day one. And Josiah just happened to be our example the first day, so he had this up on the screen, so he utilized it to encourage his peers to get to work. But then if you go up further, you can see changes that he made, and then also changes that I made for him, or offers for suggestions. Yeah, and just go up a little bit further for us, Josiah. Is that it? Yep. Okay. So what I would like is for Josiah and then Mackenzie to talk to you about what they like having those Chromebooks in class every day, using them in the language arts department especially, and any other thing they want to share with us.
I got this. All right. Hi. My favorite thing about the Chromebooks is the availability. We get to use them every day, which is pretty nice because most people don't get to use computers. I like being able to not having to slave over one computer and then get angry at our printers. We don't, excuse me. And not this project, but in the last project that we had, it was a PowerPoint over Edgar Allan Poe, because the Cask of Amontillado was written by him, and we broke it up into separate pieces, and we all did it at once, and we got it done fairly quickly. In this project, what I enjoyed, like Mrs. Blocker had said, was the comments, so that I don't have to turn it in and then say that it's wrong and then lose plenty of points and then just have to redo it all over again. With this, she's able to highlight a piece of it and tell me what she would like for me to be done with it, and then I would get that done. And if she still wants something, then she can just do that. and then it's not a waste of paper. It's easier. It's more convenient, and yeah, I like it.
Just anything you think drive.
What I really like about the Google Chromebooks is like we get the availability to have them. What I like is like the feeling of the keyboard, because it's just like I feel special with it. But one of the things I like about the PowerPoints and stuff is we can share them with whoever we want. And one of the people were always like constantly gone. Like they'd be gone and then another day they'd be there. So we had to cut them out of the project. But otherwise, it's really a good thing like to have in our school. Miss Blocker, she is a good teacher, you know, and she and she helps us out a lot. Like there's sometimes problems with the internet connection. It'll change like to DCSD guest, but it's really easy just to change it back. What I like about it is she can go through it whenever she wants, and she can just correct whatever we like did wrong, and if we had any like spelling errors or anything, she could help us with it. So
Do you have frequent internet interruptions or?
With mine, it happens like maybe like once or twice a week, but otherwise it just stays on the one internet connection. Otherwise, you know.
Are you able to ask questions more easily? Like, are you able to highlight a piece of text and say, I'm struggling with this part? Are you able to like then submit that electronically? And
Yeah, I can ask her, like I can email her a question if I wanted to, and I could comment, and she was there to help me. Yeah.
I'd like to add one other thing about the drive. So I'm one of those people that if I'm in a group project, I like to be the leader, and I like to make sure that things are done my way. And and I kind of ran into some problems when we didn't have Drive with like people would have to take it home and do it on something that I couldn't be able to look at until like the day that it was due or something. But with the Drive, it really helps because I can see what people are doing as they're working on it, like if I'm on it at the same time, and that really helps. Like I don't have that stress of, oh my gosh, I hope they did it right. You know, I know what they're doing, and if I need to review something that they're doing for a presentation that I have to talk about as well, I can look at that instead of having to go to school the next day and meet up in the morning or something like that before school and have to look at it then. It's just so much more convenient.
One of my another thing that's very convenient about it is as long as you have Google or you're at school and you have the well, like I had Mrs. Blocker for my 3B class, and then if I didn't get something done and I knew that it was due tomorrow, I had computer applications next block, and if I got all my work done there, then I could just log into my Google Drive account and everything that I had done would be on there, and then I could get it finished.
Okay. In closing, I think the importance is that with Google Apps for Education, it can be accessed from anywhere. Steps for us, I think for our next steps would be to hopefully look into more grant opportunities. This was an SCRA grant that was successful for our freshman academy. It's our 9th grade academy that has, in each house, we have 4 houses. Each one has a mobile cart that is kind of housed in language arts, but is able to go in other places of the house. And then we have one cart that is available to other teachers in the building as well. Hopefully we will get more Chromebooks that we can have, hopefully get as close to 1-to-1 as possible. Our goal is to be paperless if we can. When I first came to West, there were teachers that used to post it up. Some teachers made 50,000 copies in a year. We don't do that anymore. But still, with this, there is the possibility that we could be completely paperless. And I used to teach language arts. When people get their papers in, it takes a while to get them all graded and handed back. You can see that with what was presented up here that it's instant feedback and consistent feedback. And, after a week and hand the paper back, it's too late. Kids have moved on. And kids are used to using technology. If we are to be the Career Institute at West, we need to be a leader in technology. That's it. If you have any questions, the kids would be more than happy to answer them for you.
Any questions from the board? Director Crumley.
I don't have any, well, I do have a question for Mr. Cousins or Mrs. Blocker. I'm curious how this has changed your instruction in the classroom.
I can answer that. I know in the case of their class, it's partly flipped the classroom. I don't lecture as much, and I wasn't a big lecturer to begin with, but what do you think, probably 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, I might lecture over a pretty important topic. But I put those PowerPoints on the drive, and they're able to access them at night. I use more news articles. I use more video clips than I've had in the past. And I'm a big primary source document guy, so I like to put that kind of stuff on the drive for them to access. So the drive has just probably enhanced that more and kind of pushed me more towards more primary sources, more news articles, and news articles that they might not necessarily have access to, like articles from the New York Times, National Geographic, the BBC, articles from all over the world. I use Twitter a lot as well, so I push those out via Twitter to my students, but a lot of students don't have access to Twitter, but every one of my students has access to the drive. So I put a lot of articles on the drive. Really push the content is what I try to do with the drive.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
I could answer it as well. Slightly quickly. These, as you were able to see, they're very light and portable. And so if you are ever in a classroom, you know that sometimes the best behavior management is close proximity. And so if my students are working on a paragraph, not only can I be working on a paragraph and looking at lots and lots of different paragraphs very quickly where I'm not having to go through every student and hover over them, I can see what they're doing, but I can also be close to the student who might not be doing work or might be goofing around. And so it provides me with accessibility to see their work a lot faster, but it also provides me with a behavior management tool so that I can take this, sit in a desk next to the students who need a little more assistance.
Okay.
So it's a more efficient use of your time, too, in the
Yes, sir.
classroom?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you. This is pretty exciting. So hopefully we can find ways to get more of these in all of our schools. So thanks.
Anything else? Director Kluhl.
So the Google Drive is available at home. I can access it any time. So right now we're limiting the Chromebook Google Drive thing to the language arts, or are other curricula using Google Drive as well?
All of our students in the Davenport Community School District have a Google account, which wasn't exactly the case last year. We were kind of piloting it. This year we are live with all of our students having a Google account, which means we don't have to have our kids create them. We don't have to worry about liability issues. They're under that bubble. And so a lot of teachers we see are starting to use this as a tool to start teaching with their students and collaborating with them.
Kind of an organic process, adopted process as we go
Yep.
along. Good.
We just happen to use it in the language arts department, in the academy as a primary location, but certainly we would filter those out to different department areas, and the biggest issue is that we just don't have money to get tons and tons at the beginning.
Thank you.
My daughter is involved in debate at West High, and the debate coach will send out stuff via the drive, like upcoming meets, resolutions or bills that they're going to work on Congress in upcoming debates. And because my daughter can't always make it to the meetings, but with the drive, she has access to everything that they've done in the meetings, and she doesn't miss a beat. I know for my class, since we teach primarily 10th graders, we don't have the Chromebooks that come to us. We go to the Chromebooks in the library. So we get 45-minute shifts, and then we go back to class and work on another task.
Even with the existing labs that we have in the library, they can still access the drive, so it can be done anywhere.
Anything else? I have one question, and I'm just curious, is there anything negative about this? I understand you don't have enough money, enough of the Chromebooks, but the way that you're looking at it and using it, are there any problems from the teachers or from the students' perspective?
So one problem that we found is that, like what I've been saying with the bubble, you have less availability to other things like YouTube for educational stuff. Like if he wanted to put another video up that's on YouTube, but it's blocked by the filter, he can't do that. So it's kind of, it could be possibly stripping us of some knowledge. But so if you were to like add some things that would help, or add some things that would make it easier to share things that are currently blocked, that would really help. And another thing is that I personally think that the Chromebooks are kind of, I don't think they're bad. I'm not saying that they're bad at all, but I think they're kind of extra, you know? Like, it's something that's not exactly, we need it right now. It's something on the side that it'd definitely be useful, but I think that it's something that if it needs to, it can wait. But yeah.
One thing that could be added from my perspective is I can only share with students. I would really like to share the stuff that we do with parents. I think that would be a great contact tool to say, here's the schedule for this class, here's a review sheet for this class, look what your son or daughter did in this class, this is pretty awesome, I think you should be proud. And right now I don't have that capability, and hopefully in the future. I know that Mr. Sloat said that this was a trial year this year, and that he would expand the bubble in years to come. And I hope that he adds the capability to add parents. I think that would be a great move.
Just two negative things that I can think of. One would be that it's not necessarily an issue with the Chromebooks, but if, let's say we're working on a group project and you share it with people in your group are allowed to edit it, and if they're like, I don't want to say being stupid, but if certain circumstances come into play, then there's not really necessarily anything that you can do about it except for like edit it again, if that makes sense. And the other issue would be, I hate that it doesn't autocorrect. Because I got to push an extra button just to make the I capital, and it's a mission. It's a mission. Yeah.
Well, that's very
Director
odd, isn't
Cole.
it, that there's no autocorrect? Or is that a button that the teachers have pushed as a learning tool?
I think it's a Google thing.
Interesting. I just one last question. Is it the opinion of the students that perhaps the filter is a little overzealous? Or do you think it's about right? Because I know even teachers have talked about the inability to get to tools like YouTube and things, which can be very strong teaching tools, but I assume they can also be used very much as your projects.
I don't think it's really overzealous, really. I think it's definitely doing a good job at blocking the things that really shouldn't be looked at in school. But then again, it could also be blocking some things that are, it might think is bad. But then again, like if it's something on YouTube, like I'm going to be honest, I look up some videos on YouTube just purposely for educational things, and like at my house. But if I tried to do that at school, it'd probably be blocked. And it's packed with information, but the filter might think of it as something that's just not needed or something. So yeah, I think if we're able to, better to distinguish knowledge over something random that doesn't have anything to do with anything, then that would definitely be better.
Thank you.
Director Dickman. Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
To play off what he said, like if you click on something and it's blocked, it normally categorizes it. And as he said, if it could be distinguished, I know that would take a lot of time, but that would be nice.
In reference to one of your earlier comments, does it ever create communication issues where, since you're not in a room actually talking to another person, like where you end up going back and forth and arguing over, like in the internet form of, well, it should be this or no, it should be that?
There's an ability, like a process where you can comment, like, and it's pretty much like Facebook, kind of, but over a project, where if I'm like, sorry, that was my phone. If let's say I'm at home and I'm on my drive and another student is at their home, not my home, that'd be weird. And I want something to be done, but they don't, then I can comment, and then they can like comment on my comment, if I comment and then I like highlight something, the comment won't go away until we make a compromise, and then I will mark it as resolved. And that's another thing to where when I showed my drive the edit revisions to where it could see what I was doing all the way to step 1 to step last.
Okay, thank you.
obviously, the board has a lot of interest in all of this, and we could probably go on for quite some time. There was one thing that Mackenzie, you said, and I was curious about it, because you said, I feel special. And I was wondering if you could just explain to me a little bit more what that meant.
Well, by saying I feel special, it means like it's a privilege to have the books. Not everybody in the school district can afford them. And I feel special because by having a computer in my hands, it's money pretty much in your hands. Like, you get like all this stuff to do on it, and it's educational, and you're always learning something. And I feel important when I have it. Another thing I like about it is, like, let's say you're in a hurry and you need to get to your next class. You can just press the button to exit out of it, and it'll just automatically save. And you can just sign out and shut the book, and you can put it back in your slot. That's what I like about it.
All right, that's really cool. Thank you very much. And thank you all of you, Mr. Hassig, Mr. Cousins, Mrs. Blocker, and then especially it was Josiah, Mackenzie, Evan, and Cole, right? We got them all? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to communications. We do have two board members that are absent tonight, Director Sherwood and Director Snyder. On October 21st at 5 p.m., a board workshop at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. October 28th, 7 p.m., regular meeting, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. November 4th, 5:30 p.m., Committee of the Whole, ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. November 5th, 3 p.m., Legislative Advocacy Committee meeting, ASC Executive Boardroom. And this is a change. Normally it's from the first Thursday of each month at 4 o'clock. On November 11th, we're closed for Veterans Day. November 12th, which is Tuesday then, is 7 p.m., a regular meeting at the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom. November 14th, between 6 and 7:30 p.m., is a public discussion on the school start date and high school block schedule at the North High School Auditorium. November 18th, between 6 and 7:30 p.m., a public discussion on the school start date and high school block schedule at West High School Auditorium. On November 25th, at 7 p.m., a regular meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom, November 28th and 29th. We're closed for Thanksgiving. And next is open forum for community input, and we have no open forum requests. But I will say that open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at board meetings regarding school district issues or concerns, and we encourage everybody in the community to participate in that. There are a few things. Normally you would want to get here a little early and fill out a request and give it to the board secretary. We'll move on. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwitty.
I move the consent agenda as presented by the administration.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? We'll call for the vote. Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by the administration for adoption of the bills from the bill listing period September 19th, 2013 through October 9th, 2013. Resolution is as follows. Resolved that all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director Kluhl.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Crumwitty.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have three things before we turn to our students. When we do, Cameron, we'll start with you and report on the schools. First thing, the October 8th Band Spectacular. Each year that I see that, I am more and more amazed to see our 6 intermediate schools out there, and then to add our 3 high schools, and individually playing and together playing is just absolutely amazing. And, you know, I think about it, eat your heart out, Bettendorf, PV, North Scott, every time I see it, because nobody can do that. It's excellent. I have an email from a 7th grade football coach at Bettendorf who was writing to Coach Cronkleton, who is our smart intermediate school football coach. My name is Brian Tritt, and our 7th grade blue football team played you this past Tuesday. I wanted to relay to you how impressed I was on the energy, passion, and positive messages you were sending your team throughout the entire game. Your kids hustled, were attentive, and had great sideline demeanor. The lessons your kids learned from you, I'm sure, will carry over the rest of their lives. Keep up the great work, and best of luck to you for the rest of the season. LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, put on a trivia night on October 5th, and the beneficiary is the scholarships for our Stepping Stone kids, specifically at Jefferson Edison, and they raised $500 during that endeavor. So we certainly send them our gratitude, and this helps our families out directly. And with that, what's going on in the schools?
Well, this year I've seen a lot more school spirit, like not even just for like football and stuff like that, but like volleyball tournaments and stuff like that. I've seen a lot more kids show up, like for West and North too. Like when I go to like their Thursday games or something like that, I've seen a lot more school spirit this year than in years past.
I thought I would just mention that the Central Marching Band, which I'm a part of, this past weekend competed in Minnesota, and it was, I think, a regional competition, but also the Minnesota state competition at the Dome where the Vikings play. I don't know the name of it by heart, but we competed and made finals for the first time as a marching band and got 8th overall. The other 9 schools that were in the finals, they had been Bands of America regional finalists, they had been national finalists, and Central doesn't have any of those distinctions, which shows that the marching band has now approached a new level, and just how we have like our last competition of the season this weekend and our last football game this Friday, and how it's been a really good year and a really good environment.
There's also been a lot of school spirit rising at North High School. We've really been pushing our Spirit Week, and we've been seeing a lot more participants than in years past. Along with that, we're also seeing a lot more enthusiasm in our upcoming play, Moon Over Buffalo. There seems to be a lot of talk going about that, and I haven't really noticed that when we put on past plays, just a lot of students being actually hyped up to go see a drama put on by other students. And so it appears to me that student spirit is really starting to go through the roof, and as a school we're starting to come together, especially with the way that our football team has been finally putting up on the scoreboard and our freshman team is scoring. So a lot of that, and I don't know, students just seem overall more content with the way the school is now after our construction.
One thing we're really excited about at West is our upcoming musical, Wizard of Oz. It's going to be a huge production, probably the biggest one we've done since Phantom of the Opera, and we have a new sound system that we just got a grant for that we're really excited about to use with it. And being a part of musicals, I'm especially excited about that.
I would like to congratulate Central on your guys' competition in Minnesota. I'm also I'm one of the 3 drum majors at West, so I'm looking forward to the state contest this weekend. But as you guys know, the food drive has started, and West has really been trying to put forth the effort. Our robotics team, the Combustible Lemons, has actually started trying to bring in some food for the hunger drive. They raised over, I want to say, 3,800 meals for the hunger drive already this weekend, and it was very cool that we could be a part of kind of, saying that West did that. But
Just to add on the robotics team, they teamed together with a couple churches and community members, so it wasn't just a school effort. We were trying to get the community involved as well, and that was, I think, it was 3,888 packages of food that they did just on the weekend.
We've seen a lot of changes at Kimberly Center. We had, first quarter, we had 241 students who applied and had been accepted to Kimberly Center. And our capacity is 250, so we're very close. And that was last quarter, and this quarter I know I've seen at least 10 new students, so we're full, and the halls are very crowded, so we need a new school, just meaning. Our attendance rate is 87%, which is actually pretty decent for our school. We had a student elected, 1 out of 4 students in Iowa, to represent IJAG in Washington, D.C., which is good. And we have this thing going on called Dress for Success, which is like, it's pictures of like quotes like on how to dress for work and stuff around the school. And in our advisory classes, we've been like going over like doing like practice interviews and stuff to like get our students ready for life after high school.
That's our report, Mr. President.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion for the district-wide security camera?
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation for the plans and specifications as presented for the district-wide security camera Phase 2 project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the district-wide security camera Phase 2 project as published in the Quad City Times on Friday, October 4th, 2013. Anyone wishing to speak on this project, please step forward to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director DeFau.
Yes.
Director Crumwoody.
Yes.
Director Dickman.
Yes.
Director Kluhl.
No.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion regarding the Davenport Reeds joint resolution?
Mr. President,
Director Crumwoody.
I move the administration's recommendation that the board approve the Davenport Reeds joint resolution as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Director Kluhl.
for the benefit of the public, maybe it would be a good idea to read that resolution.
Superintendent Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a joint resolution of the Eastern Iowa Community Colleges, City of Davenport, and the Davenport Community School District. Davenport Reads, a joint project to ensure that all the people of Davenport of all ages will build their knowledge and expand opportunities through reading. Whereas reading is a fundamental tool and building block for learning. Whereas families are a child's first teacher and are critical to the learning process for all youth. Whereas lifelong learning and adult literacy is a gateway to opportunity and independence. Whereas community agencies and partners are a vital resource for supporting families and individuals in building literacy and life skills. Be it resolved that the Eastern Iowa Community Colleges, City of Davenport, and the Davenport Community School District hereby agree to enter a partnership to instill the love of and appreciation for reading among the people of Davenport of all ages in an effort to bring happiness, success, and fulfillment to lives through reading. Be it resolved that the Davenport Reads partners will cooperate to work in concert, locate resources, and leverage knowledge, which will motivate the people of Davenport to make literacy a priority in our schools, homes, businesses, and recreational activities, opening opportunities and pathways for all Davenport residents, regardless of age, to learn to read. Be it resolved that the Eastern Iowa Community College, City of Davenport, and the Davenport Community School District will coordinate and leverage the power of the Davenport community to ensure that because Davenport reads, the quality of life within the city will improve.
Thank you. Is there more discussion? Director Kluhl.
Well, as we discussed at Committee of the Whole, I'm just thankful that the board has this opportunity to cooperate with the city on reading, something that the board has agreed is our number one priority, legislative priority this year, preschool, early childhood literacy, pre-K through 2. This is the kind of collaboration that is going to help our students in a big way that we could not do by ourselves. So I'm just very appreciative that Davenport has decided to put forward this resolution and that we joined it.
Thank you. Anything else? We're going to do this a little bit differently. I'm still going to ask for the vote, and then I'll talk a little bit more about this. Director Crumwoody?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. The motion carries. Before we continue with our actions, we have 3 of these joint resolutions. I'm going to go ahead and sign them on behalf of the board right now. Normally I would do it later, but I'm sorry, I only brought one tonight, but you can have it. Now, this is a joint resolution between the Eastern Iowa Community Colleges, the City of Davenport, and the Davenport Community School District. There's right now, all of you, and you students should have one of these also. You have a student pledge card, not a student pledge card, a pledge card. The intent here, and I would encourage all of you student board members and board members to look at the pledge and consider signing the pledge. It's as a beginning attempt by the leadership to demonstrate our pledge to this resolution and to the intent of what we just agreed to with the resolution. So that's something that I would encourage you to all consider. And I think with that, unless there's anything else on this, okay, great. Then I think we will continue on. May I have a motion regarding level 1 and 2 investigators for 2013 and 14?
Mr. President,
Director DeFau.
I move the board accept the administration's recommendation and approve the district level 1 and 2 investigators as presented to serve for a one-year period for 2013-14.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. Director DeFau?
Yes.
Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Crumity?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of board secretary's salary?
Mr. President,
Director Dickman.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommendation that the board approve the board secretary's salary as discussed in closed session on September 11th, 2013.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Dickman?
Yes.
Director Kluhl?
Yes.
Director Crumity?
Yes.
Director DeFau?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. We'll move into discussion items. First up is the youth survey executive summary.
I have Ellen Riley here, who is our expert. As you know, the summary is quite lengthy, and asked her to give us an executive dose of it and see if you have any questions.
Thank you. Good evening. I have provided to you in your board packet on Friday a brief summary of the Iowa Youth Survey. I believe that a copy had been emailed to you. It is approximately 147 pages long of 10-point font numbers and charts that are rather overwhelming. And if you're not familiar with how to look at it and how to read it, it is quite daunting. So what I've done is taken some of the topics some of the questions that we've been particularly following for the last 12 years in Davenport schools, and looking at the change in responses from students on these particular questions. And the chart that you have, the white columns that say DCSD are our responses for each of those years. The grayed out columns are other school districts in Iowa and how they respond, and that's a culminated number. It is not one particular school district, it is an average of all school districts. What we started looking at in particular as a district was if students feel safe in school. And if you kind of see these questions in general really relate to personal behavior, how they treat others, and how they behave in school. And feeling safe in school, I think it's particularly notable that we have seen a significant increase in the positive responses for students saying that they feel safe in school. Particularly, it's been gradual from 99 to 2008, but we did see the most significant jump from 2008 to 2012. And if you look further on down at the other questions, you see that really that one, and then the last one about students treating each other with respect in school is the other question that students respond more positively to. There's been many initiatives in the district that have addressed student safety and that have addressed climate and culture in buildings, in particular bullying. And we are much more vocal now about particular activities that promote safety in the school or that keep kids safe, including lockdowns. And we started doing regular lockdown training in schools in about 2005, 2006. Then it really became much more noticeable in 2008 and 2009. So you can see that some of the initiatives I believe that we've had have definitely contributed to the overall attitude about students feeling safe in school. In addition, we started the Olveus Bully Prevention Program in 2008. And research indicates that in order for a program to truly take hold and for some significant change to be observed, you need about 5 years for a program to be in place. And we are in our 5th year of Olveus within our school district, and we continue to see positive results out of that program in relation not only to surveying, but as to how we respond to bullying. And you've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. We will never eliminate bullying in schools. What we will do is decrease it. We will become better able to identify it and work with it and work with students who are being bullied and students who are doing the bullying. So I think you see those results in this very broad survey. I do want to point out that the survey was given every 3 years, from 99 to 2008, starting in 2008. Now we do it every 2 years. And the state of Iowa and the Department of Public Health is reconstructing the Iowa Youth Survey. And I have been contacted to assist in that review and reconstruction. So I'll be helping the Department of Public Health in addressing how to make this a better survey. Do you have any questions?
Anybody?
I guess my question is there anything that the board could be doing that would further help? It definitely looks like we're making improvements, but it also certainly seems like, especially in the last category of treating with respect, that there's still improvement that needs to be made or can be made. Is there anything that the board could do that would assist you in that?
Well, if it would be okay with you, I think I might like to turn to one of the student board members, Adam Call. I believe he may have a comment to make about that.
Either way, whatever's more comfortable for you.
Right here. What she's referring to is that at Central we got a grant from the state for the Iowa Safe and Supportive Schools grant. And what that grant has done for the past couple of years is allow us to hire a grant manager. Can I name her?
Sure.
Yeah, Ms. Farrah Roberts, and she has been wonderful with setting up a youth leadership team for the IS3, which as a senior I'm now president of, and it basically is a group that meets every 2 weeks and brings in all the issues of the schools, all the things that bug the heck out of us. We pretty much rant for an hour, and she's able to listen to us and talk to the administration about the problems we've had, talk to students, make surveys, do whatever's necessary through the grant. And we've seen remarkable improvement, not so much from a statistical point of view, but just from a kind of mindset point of view. We've seen a lot of improvement in things we specifically did. If I can make an example, we had the idea that we should, in the girls' restrooms, put up whiteboards that the girls in the youth group went around and wrote inspirational quotes on, such as like, be a beautiful, and just little simple things, but that make them happy. And we had it all last year. They were never vandalized, even though it could have been very easy to. We had several people comment about how great it made them feel, and in total, I'm pretty sure the project cost us less than $50. Mm-hmm. It's simply that what would be helpful from the school board is the funding of Farrah Roberts' job. After this year, is it this year or next year? After next year,
September.
after next year, the grant will run out, and with that, Mrs. Roberts' job will also now be without pay, and she would love to stay, and we would love to have her from how much of a benefit it's been, but without the money to pay her, that's really not an option. And then more than that, I think the IS3 is a group like this, a youth leadership team that actually has a teacher involved and has a project is more than beneficial for the rest of the schools in the community. It really brings the issues to a student level, and we've told teachers almost at every meeting something that they did not know about the school that we as students did, and there had just been no bridge to communicate that beforehand.
The IS3 project is actually having a tremendous influence on the Iowa Youth Survey and how things are changing. They've been involved in the development of the Safe and Supportive Schools Survey that they do, and that is going to be part of what influences the new Iowa Youth Survey. More than FARA is a wonderful addition to Central, but I think part of what has happened here is we've got an Iowa Youth Survey, we're hearing youth voice. This survey tends to be used predominantly for local, regional, and state organizations to write grants to receive funding to provide services for youth. It's one of the main reasons why Davenport Schools continues to do it. We also use this information for grant writing, but it becomes much more influential when it's being used for juvenile justice programs and other youth programs around the state. Central is a prime example of how when you take a survey of students and then talk with the students and show them the results on a smaller level, how they can invoke change in their school. So the Iowa Youth Survey is very large. It needs to be smaller. The IS3 survey works well because it's small and focused. And the design around the project is to get student voice. The Iowa Youth Survey needs more of that. As a board, I don't know if you can influence the Department of Public Health, influence the SAU, or the board just on how important student voice is and how much more useful the Iowa Youth Survey could be if it wasn't so daunting and if it could be utilized more in a school base.
And then is that a program that you think would be expanded, that could be duplicated well at the other high schools?
From IS3, actually there's 19 schools in Iowa who are doing it right now, and the U.S. Department of Education is looking at this model and replicating it at a national level. It's been so successful in Iowa.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Director DeFau.
Yeah, there seems to be a real disconnect, but especially the questions relevant to being accepting of others versus students in my school treating one another with respect. And, I find that telling and disturbing at the same time. It's very disappointing that as a whole, only 55% of our students believe that their peers treat one another with respect, and that's not that far off from what the state is reporting as well. So I don't think it's a situation that's exclusive to us. Whatever we can do to influence changing behaviors in those arenas, I think that that especially is one of the largest predicators of bullying that we have. So I'd also be interested in any of the students' perspective on this data. Does it seem on target to you based upon your own experiences? What do you think?
It was interesting, though, Adam did point out to me that exact thing earlier before the meeting started, that there is a disconnect between those two things, and we need to pay attention to that. Is it definition? Is it expectation? Because one is how they feel, one is how they see others behaving.
Right.
And so it's two very different perceptions.
If I may make the comment, I think the main reason we're having an issue is because we're getting a lot of programs, speakers, papers about bullying, and it seems to be for the students that bullying is this very severe thing, which it is, but it's this high point, and we haven't really addressed the middle realm, which is respecting each other. it's kind of hard for students to think of respecting each other as bullying when the examples we see for bullying are cornering someone in the hallway, picking on someone on a daily basis. I mean, respecting is just if you bump into someone saying, excuse me, if you hold the door for someone, that's more respect, while we're just getting the message of don't bully, which is cornering people in the hallway, which doesn't happen. They've done a great job of that. Now we just have to move it down to defining what respect is and how to do that as well.
I should point out my supervisor sent me an excellent article today on just that particular topic, and so I think I'll pass that on to the student board members.
I really think this is like a great idea that you guys are doing. I do think that we need to enhance the word of respect throughout all the Davenport schools. But I think another thing is with the numbers so low of respect that maybe people see the same people continuously unrespecting others. So you can see that if everyone sees those certain people disrespecting others, then the numbers would be lower. I'm kind of struggling to get my point across, but I think maybe some of you understand.
Well, isn't there there's an 80-20 sort of rule, and darn it, I can't remember the technical term for it now, but where 20% of the population does 80% of the naughty stuff. And so that could be an influence on that number. I think that's kind of what you're trying to say, is there's a particular group of people that maybe are doing it repeatedly. It's not a large group, but a lot of people see it, and so it comes out in the statistics. And that makes sense.
Jeremy?
I feel like another part of the huge gap in the data is simply the wording of the question. When you're asking a student to judge their other students, it is common that a negative will highlight itself over a positive. If the question was worded more like, do you treat another student, do you treat your fellow students with respect, I feel like the numbers would be significantly higher, because the students will tend to think highly of themselves, where they will tend to look down on others for the few negative events that will happen in that 80-20 rule. Thank you.
To add on to what, I forget your name, Adam, okay, to add on to what he said, I think I agree that one of the main problems is kids don't understand that minor things are bullying too, because every time we're taught something in our advisory is you're disrespecting another student about their sexuality, race, anything along those lines, but they don't, it's more of a being kind to others, not, it's people are, in the hallways I constantly just see people just being rude, it's not a thing where they're making fun of people, it's just they're not welcoming everybody.
Was there anything else, Director DeFau? Director Crumwitty.
I'm curious to hear from you students. Several years ago, the Davenport schools started what we called the Life Skills Program. And it was implemented in all of the elementary schools and in the middle schools. And we thought by the time that students got into high school that we would take care of some of these issues that we're talking about, and one being respect. Respect was one of the life skills. I'm curious, in your elementary schools and in your middle schools, how much did you deal with the life skills and conversations and working on those life skills at the elementary and middle school before you even got into high school?
Well, I know at my elementary school in Madison, across the street, they have like a sheet where they have like whatever. I think there's like 14 of them. I think somewhere around there. And like, say you'd like be in class and a kid didn't have a pencil, you'd like give them a pencil. They'd give you that sticker for that thing. And if you filled them up, there'd be like a snack or a toy. Like if you got it filled up. So it was like you really wanted to get your toy, so you try to do those things. I mean, and then, since then it's kind of like dwindled off. I mean, they talked about it in junior high school, but didn't really do much with it. And you like see the little posters at the high school and everything, but like it's easy to just look past them. You don't really, ever since like elementary school, you really haven't heard too much about it.
Do you want to go? It's okay. 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 So, yeah, to add on what he said, I feel like the whole life skills and respect thing really drops off in middle school, and that is especially where it's needed because middle school is just a rough patch in any person's life. Let's face it, you're putting a whole bunch of hormonal people they have not fully experienced what that's like, and you're shoving them all into a building for 3 years together. You really need to hit hard in that area these ideas of life skills and respect, and it feels like those are just really short-edged, and it's more about preparing yourself for high school academically, and then when you get there, it's all about preparing for college academically, and then they kind of start to focus a little bit more on respect and professionalism. But you really need to hit hard on that in the middle schools instead of just passing that on to the high schools and introducing that in elementary. There's just a gap.
If I can say something about it, I went to Lincoln Academy of Integrated Arts for elementary and then Sudlow Intermediate, and if they did mention the life choices, they definitely did not do it often enough in regards to how much work we had in school, because I don't remember it being mentioned at all. I was probably too focused on everything else I was doing in school. I don't remember life skills being brought up significantly enough for me to remember at this point as a senior in high school. Pretty much everything I've learned has been from religious experiences more than school experiences. I would have been very happy, though, to have learned it early on in elementary, so I think it's something that should be looked into.
First of all, I appreciate your comments. And I certainly would ask the administration, I think this is an area that perhaps we do need to revisit. I've had this feeling for a few years that we really hit it hard about 10 years ago, and I think we've kind of gotten away from it, and perhaps we wouldn't have some of these issues and have this type of data in front of us if we really would concentrate more at the elementary and middle school especially, and solve some of these issues before we get into high school. So thank you for your input.
And I'd just
Director
like to
Dick-
say perhaps another time, not tonight of course, we can have some students from the elementary schools come and talk about Second Step. We did start re-implementing that with a much more invigorated fervor this year, and I'm hearing fabulous reports on the use of Second Step in the classroom, and it's now Second Step for social and academic success. So I think I will probably put something together for you in a board packet in a couple of weeks and make a recommendation that some of them come and speak about the success of the program.
Director Dickman.
I'm curious if you guys would be interested in brainstorming ideas on things that you would think would help to influence your peers to create a culture of respect. If you're able to go home and brainstorm those with your friends and things like that, and email it to Superintendent Tate or to the board, I know that would be something I'd be really interested in getting your feedback and your ideas because it's your peers.
Director Kluhl.
I haven't looked at the full report yet, but I want to. And I know this is just a snapshot, but it seems very doom and gloom. I mean, why don't they have questions like, our school spirit has gotten better? That's just kind of a rhetorical comment. I'll take a look at the thing. But are these columns that you have here, is that the way the questions were posed? For instance, violence is the worst way to solve problems?
More or less, yes.
It's interesting that across the board in Davenport and all of Iowa, that is the one that you've picked out there that has continually gotten worse to the point where 72% say it's the worst way. 28% say it's perhaps the best way. That is surprising.
I feel like if someone says that violence is, I feel like if someone didn't choose that violence is the worst way, doesn't necessarily mean that they think that violence is the best way. I know that in North High School, we've recently implemented this system called ALICE training, where as opposed to a lockdown, we are more actively trying to escape and defend ourselves. I feel like the worst way to solve any problem is to do nothing about it. And so I feel like these decreasing numbers are not necessarily a bad thing. Perhaps it's a different perspective in thinking.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay. Thank you very much, Ellen.
Thank you, and thank you, student board members.
We'll move on to the teacher and administrator evaluation process.
We have two presenters, Bill Schneiden and Deb Miller.
In your board packets this week, you had some handouts from Bill and I. There's a handout entitled DCSD Administrative Evaluation System, and that has the leadership goals for principals and administrators, as well as some of the philosophy and procedural things. And those sheets are taken right from the administrative handbook that we have in the district. And then there's also some handouts with the teacher evaluation system, the same thing, the philosophy, the procedures, and the standards, just for you to have for your review. And tonight we prepared a short PowerPoint presentation that we'd like to go through with you. We're kind of going to piggyback off of each other because we believe that the systems are related. And so both the teacher and the administrative evaluation systems are designed to do several things. One is to promote professional development and growth of the employee. As a professional organization, it is our goal and should always be our goal to promote the success of the people that we work with, whether they're students, teachers, administrators, coaches, all of our constituents. And when we do that, and when we get people to be at their full potential, they're better able and equipped to help us promote district goals and objectives. The systems, whether you're a teacher or administrator, are both designed to be collaborative in nature. So as a teacher, you're working with your colleagues and with the building principal to collaborate your professional development and your growth as an employee. And as an administrator, you're working with an executive director and the superintendent. The systems are both then also designed to address performance concerns when that becomes necessary. And the system is not a gotcha system, it's to provide support. Our hope is always that if someone is struggling, we can get them to a point where they are proficient and able to achieve all of the teaching standards and the leadership standards. Did you want to add anything? So when you talk about the teacher evaluation system, it's three-tiered. Tier 1 is basically for our new teachers, and those are the teachers that are brand new to the system, as well as probationary teachers. In Iowa, by Iowa School Code, there's a requirement for a 3-year probationary period. So we often have teachers that come from other states who have not been through a probationary period, and then they have to go through three years of probation here in Iowa. There's also teachers who come to us with no experience in Iowa, and so they may not have had probationary experience. They might have, depending on the state they come from. If they've had probationary experience in another state, then we require 1 year of probation here in Davenport. Our new teachers also have the mentoring program, brand new teachers, and I know Sherry Wilson has talked with you about that in the past as well. Tier 3 is for our experienced teachers, and on Tier 3, it's basically a 3-year plan, professional development plan. For the first year, teachers are working with their colleagues and the building principal, and they're deciding what they're going to do for their plan. So they might be doing some research, they might be attending some conferences, but the end goal of that first year is to write a plan of professional development that they will implement during year 2. Year 2 is the implementation year, and year 3 is the reflection year. How did the plan go? Did I achieve my goals? Did I achieve professional growth? And then Tier 3 is for our teachers needing assistance. And in Tier 3, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, but the standards that the teachers work on are the 8 teaching standards, and that doesn't matter, you know, it's for every teacher. Every teacher has to show that they can meet all 8 standards. The first standard deals with enhancing performance and developing relationships with students and parents, and then creating an environment of mutual respect and rapport within your classroom. The second standard deals with content knowledge. How well does the teacher know the core standards? How well can they understand and have knowledge of their content area? The third standard is how well can teachers use instructional planning and preparing and data to prepare for their classroom, to make adjustments when they need to, and to deliver that instruction. Standard 4 is delivering instruction, and I guess I should have said at the beginning, a lot of these overlap. So delivery of instruction is how well can they meet the needs of the diverse learners in their classroom? Can they adapt and make adaptations to instruction as needed based on the needs of their students? Standard 5 is about monitoring their achievement, student achievement, and that's through formative assessments and data and the data teams. And then again, how well do they use what they learn about student achievement to impact the instruction? Standard 6 is classroom management. Standard 7 is professional growth. And then Standard 8 is professional responsibilities and ethics.
Like teachers, all administrators in the Davenport schools are evaluated annually, and this process is done by the administrator's immediate supervisor. Through the supervision and evaluation process, they identify strengths and growth areas are identified and communicated with the administrator, and then guidance and support is given in areas of need. The administrators, together with their supervisors, collaborate on writing a professional development plan. Iowa code mandates that this happens on an annual basis. You identify criteria and goals, you set those in the fall, and then you do a follow-up in the winter where you go out to check on how are what's the progress monitoring that's put in place for these goals and how is it going. And then in the spring you go back and collect evidence in each of those areas of the administrator's competency, and then we use the summers to take that information and build the next year's plan. The executive directors prepare a written evaluation then at the end of each of these cycles, and that is shared with in the administrator's personnel folder. And if you're a brand new administrator to the district, you do have to go through a 1-year mentoring program, and that's mandated by Iowa code. And that is, we currently use the School Administrators of Iowa as the program that our first-year administrators are a part of. And like teachers, the Iowa School Leadership has these 6 standards that are checked for competency, shared vision, cultural learning, management, family and community, ethics, and social context.
So the next step is what happens when a teacher is not able to meet one or more of the 8 teaching standards. That is considered Tier 3. And in Tier 3, there are 2 levels of plans that can be enacted by the administrator and the teacher together. Again, this is a collaborative effort, so everything is done together. Level A is an awareness level, And within level A, the teacher and the principal work together to write an improvement plan based on the standards that are not being met. It is time-bound. A level A plan can go on from 1 month to 3 months, and it can be reevaluated at the end of 3 months and continued on for an additional 3 months. At the end of that time frame, whether you go for just 3 months or if you end up extending it, the administrator has to be able to say that the teacher is meeting standards, or if they go through it once, they have to be able to say they're either meeting the standards and the plan will be dropped, or they need to say that there needs to be a continuation of the plan. They've met some of the standards, or they're working towards it, but they haven't quite met them all, and then continue it. And then at the end of that second 3 months, it can be dropped, or you can move on to a level B, which is a more intensive assistance. It's a remediation plan that allows for outside help and a team to come in and help with the plan and with some strategies and activities and really the remediation at a more intense level. That plan can go on for up to 6 months, and it can be extended for up to a year longer than that. I didn't say...
Question on that.
Sure.
Does a teacher then continue to teach under level B and remediation?
Yes. They continue to teach, and they still are on a Tier 2 plan. They still have the responsibility on a level A of continuing with their Tier 2 plan.
Just wondering about the harm to students that's happening. I know this is not just us, this is a general question. I'm just wondering if a teacher is in that position where they're in remediation, which is pretty serious, I think, in terms of how effective things are going in the classroom.
Well, and an awareness level doesn't, I mean, it might mean that they're not meeting part of one of the standard. It's not as egregious perhaps as a level B. A level B is pretty intense, but then you're also getting a pretty significant amount of support within the classroom. At a level A, in a plan, you might, be meeting with a principal to go over lesson plans. You might visit another classroom of a teacher to see what their classroom management style is and how they organize their classroom. You might be reading some literature about whatever the initiatives are of the building. At a level B, you're actually going to have people in your classroom. That's when we might use some of our curriculum specialists to help support through modeling some lessons. That's when the executive directors might get involved to go into the room and evaluate. And so, yeah. But they are teaching the whole time.
Excuse me, I want to interrupt.
Sure.
You've got a question also?
I also really agreed with this proposition until Mr. Kluhl brought up this little kind of mishap. I know there's been a couple of teachers that I think due to seniority have stayed around in our district, and sometimes it happens, although we don't want to admit it. Some teachers we do not learn as much from, and it's a waste of our time, your time, our tax dollars. And I really think if they are to that point that they should be eliminated, because I don't know, there's been a lot of negative commentary from some teachers, and they keep with them just because of seniority, and it's not fair to us.
I would say just that it's a process that we have to go through, and it's really mandated by the Iowa School Code in terms of how we can remove a teacher who's non-performing. So we are up against some of that as we work through the system. I would also say, this is just my second year in this position, but I think, just from last year to this year, last year I was involved with 2 performance issues, and I'm supposed to be involved with them when they get to the level A and level B. And this year I've already been involved with 8. So we are getting, I believe, better at doing this. I think part of it is there's a couple of things that have helped with that. One is the non-negotiables that Dr. Tate has in place. It's something for administrators to wrap their or to give legs to what they go after when they see performance issues in the classroom, with very specific things that can be targeted and put into place for teachers. The other thing that I think is helping to drive this is the fact that we have SAMs now in some of our buildings, so that the principals actually have time to be an instructional leader and to be spending 40 to 50% of their day doing observations in classrooms. So some of the things maybe that went unnoticed in the past are not now. So those are both good things, I think. What would you?
I would agree. I think the idea that the SAM can free the principal up to go in to the classroom and be the leader is making a difference in terms of what the expectation, exactly what you said. And the non-negotiables gives them something to go in and hold people accountable for, or to.
Is there flexibility within your position where you can start counseling a teacher on maybe not pursuing a teaching position anymore? Like what's the timetable of how long they would be on level B before counseling is initiated on maybe finding other?
I would say that occurs on an ongoing basis. I would say that it's based on the situation, but I would say that there's even some of that goes on before people get into even the Tier 3 situation. I would say that happens at our Tier 1 too, especially with our new teachers, and it becomes evident through the process that they go through for 2 years in the mentoring, whether they're going to be able to make the grade or not, so to speak. So I would say counseling goes on at that level as well. And it's a disservice to everyone if we have people in our students, first of all, the school, and really the people too, if they're not meant to be a teacher, if they don't have what it takes to do that kind of have that kind of a career. So I think we're getting better at it. Are we perfect? No. Do we have a ways to go? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the profession itself calls for a higher level of accountability. At sometimes, more frequently, we're seeing that too, because again of the non-negotiables and the expectation of this is what is to be occurring, and the progress monitoring that's going on now. That wasn't the indicators of success as a teacher, for example, in student achievement, is now available to us on a more regular basis.
And just the responsibility of the data teams and that whole process, and using formative assessments and some of the training that's gone on with letters and dibbles, and it's all having an impact, I think, on bringing more to the surface people who need to be on plans and people who need not to be teaching.
It's harder to hide.
Yeah. Sure.
The same thing I would comment on the administrative side. There are standards and performance indicators, and when remediation is identified, discussion is held with your immediate supervisor. In the case of the principals, Mr. Scott and myself are in constant contact with Dr. Tate, and we discuss on a regular basis if we see or have a reason to believe that there's an issue within the principal ranks. And we, in the one short year I've done it, we've put together ideas for where we create like a target for growth, and we identify and brainstorm with the principal some possible things that they'd be willing to try to remediate that weakness in that particular area of the standard. And at any point where it became to the point where we weren't seeing the progress or we weren't getting the improvement that we want, it would certainly be something that the superintendent would be involved in from the very beginning. They would write a plan, it would be asked to be enacted, and then it would be reviewed at the end of the annual cycle. So really the remediation plan is monitored throughout the whole year once it is put into place. I guess we have, if anybody has any questions for either Deb or I.
I'm guessing there will be a few. Director Cromwell.
First of all, thank you for the information. How long has this system been in place?
Oh,
the teacher
evaluate.
Oh,
2007. 6.
Yeah, I don't remember any. I don't remember any other system.
A number of years.
Yeah, and there's talk about revamping and reevaluating and all that, but I believe it'll be years.
and it's my understanding when this was put together, it was put together by the teachers and the administration together. It was a combination of people that came together and said, this is what we want our evaluation system to look like. It is not a system that the administration just said, well, we're going to do this.
Right.
Okay.
And it was a year-long process, as I remember it. I remember that people like Tom Green was one of the people. Julie was on the committee, Julie Sinzeski. It was, you know, a committee of many stakeholders.
It was a comment from our students, and I know board members have talked about this before, about teacher evaluation, principal evaluation in this district, and how complex it can be. And I wanted us to, first of all, walk through this evaluation system because it is a well thought out system with a lot of input from both from teachers and administrators. I think one of the issues often comes with inconsistencies of implementation. And I've heard that conversation many times, that one school is implementing it to the T and the next school is not. And so I'm wondering what kind of work you're doing with principals especially to make sure that we don't have those type of inconsistencies from school to school. So do you have ongoing conversations with principals? And
Well, Deb and I just had a conversation last week about how important it probably will be, it needs to be for her to come in and redo this, redo it with the principals, bring them back on board. There's several new administrators. I don't remember a review on this process in the last few years, and we were both building principals, so there's certainly a need for that. We just last week talked about what would be the best way to roll this out, and maybe come into the elementary principals meetings, for example, and take a session to go through the process and lay out the expectations again.
And my focus this year has really been on Tier 3 to provide that support for principals. So I'm attending all of those meetings, but I've also giving suggestions on, we're talking about monthly meetings for some of these people, meetings every 3 to 4 weeks. We're talking about extensive write-ups, talking specifically about the standards and how they either are or are not being met. And so it's like writing almost a term paper every time you have a meeting. But really, we need that kind of data to support either the growth or the lack of growth, in case we need to move in a different direction. And so hopefully that's helping with the process. But again, well, you were a building administrator. It's
I like hearing that, because I think what's happened with principals, to get your license, number one, to keep your license, you have to go through evaluator renewal training, and you spent a week probably doing that and going through all of those standards so people really understand it. But then after you're out in the field, it's like, well, you're on your own pretty much, and making sure that it's implemented and implemented consistently across the district. That's what I think the issue is sometimes in our district. That
I think because people haven't had a lot of experience, and this is my opinion, but that it's daunting for them even sometimes to take it on. Not that they don't realize that it needs to be, but just where do I get started and what kind of support can I expect to have? So that's what I'm trying to do this year. And Bill and I are trying to work together, I would say, as he said a few minutes ago, to determine, what principals need so that we can make sure that we use the system to the best that it can be used.
I would say, I believe most of our administrators were just retrained in the latest round through the AEA of the evaluator training. They're kind of on the same cycle.
Yeah,
so that
there are many of us
most
that
of
were
them
hired.
just went through that training. And the other piece, again, is I would think that the having a SAM, the buildings that have the luxury of having a SAM, that's just another opportunity for the principal to do a better job with evaluation, because they're more in tune with the instructional piece of their job now. So hopefully we'll see some sports on that.
And I would, I believe that out of the 8 that I'm involved with right now, 6 of them are from buildings that have SAMs in them.
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions or comments?
Can you clarify again, I guess maybe just me, what brings a teacher into the Tier 3 category? Is it failing to meet, there's obviously many different bullet points under each standard.
Right.
Is it multiple ones in one standard, or how does that?
Yeah, it can be in one standard, it can be a couple of standards. There's, I believe, 43 criteria amongst the 8 standards. It's a progression. So if for instance, under standard 6, which is classroom management, if a teacher's not meeting maybe one of those with rapport with students or whatever, it might just begin as a conversation with the principal. One of the ones that I've just recently been involved in this week, there were, I think, 6 or 8 things that occurred since the beginning of the school year. And in the conversation I had with the principal this week, or the end of last week, sorry, he was listing all of the things that had happened since the beginning of the year, and he said, I'm getting ready to do a letter of reprimand. And I said, what about a Tier 3? And he said, you're right, that's what we need to do, a Tier 3. So sometimes it's just talking through those things and realizing, yeah, I have done 8 things and had some conversations and made some attempts to have the person improve since the beginning of the year, and it hasn't happened. So we need to move on and heighten the sense of urgency and the expectations that are out there for the person. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it can be one, it can be multiple, but I would say it's a progression. So just because a person isn't meeting one of the criteria doesn't mean they'd be put on a plan. It would have to be a pattern of not meeting several of the criteria or a couple of the standards.
Director Kluhl, did you have something?
Yeah. I was just thinking about our business. Our business is about kids. We've got a lot of teachers that we have to take care of too, and there are certainly guidelines, state guidelines, that we have to follow in terms of how we do these things, and these are personnel issues which are by their nature very sensitive. But I'm thinking, aside from rateyourteacher.com, students really don't have an end to this process, but they're the ones that spend most of the time in front of good teachers, mediocre teachers, and bad teachers. Are you aware of any districts anywhere that might have an input process for students? I mean, we've seen tonight, honestly, I've never seen such insightful comments from a student school board since I've sat up here, and I really appreciate it. And so there are some students, and that's all of you, there are some students who could provide some darn good input. Is there any way that can happen?
I don't know. I think it's something worth researching. You asked if I knew of any other districts. I don't, but it certainly would be worth looking at. And I agree with you. We were just sitting in the back of the room as Ellen was up here saying the student board members this year are articulate and they're on point with some of the things they're saying. So it might be the perfect year to try something like that with some support and input from them.
I think they would be supportive. Don't want to speak for them, but.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. I love the first portion. I just think that something could be added to it. I was thinking maybe for a suggestion, taking if you guys could make it so that every term or every time the class ends, taking a couple of students from each class and having them rate. So it's not biased. But it's not everyone. Just so you kind of get a. There's some students that are just going to be like, oh, I hate this teacher, but then there's other students that really love to learn. I love to learn, and I see this happening a lot. There are quite a few not quite a few, I can't say that, but there are teachers that I have particularly not learned too much from, and I love learning, so it's a waste of my time.
I will tell you that when you go to college next year, that tends to be the way it is now. I happen to be in school myself, but every class you take, you're asked to evaluate the teacher, and it's a very quick little survey, but so it might be a model that you could almost look at a high school. Every course you take in the state universities anyway, they ask you to do an exit interview of some kind. It's electronic, and it gets sent to your email. It takes 2 seconds to do it, but they get some feedback on engagement and, what you get out of the course, those kinds of things. So might be something, a model to look at.
Yeah. Go in alphabetical order.
I agree that we should at least have something to evaluate teachers on. Not that we should be the ones to evaluate them, but I know we have the option of filling out a student incident report, but that's only for serious issues. I feel like that, for more minor things, we aren't learning, those things are for if we're having serious problems. But it would be nice if we're not actually learning from the teacher to just have input on it.
I know that I had a geography teacher, Mr. Heller, and at the end of his course, he had the entire class go out and evaluate him and give him suggestions on how they think that he may improve if they felt like he wasn't doing well. And I saw that a lot of people are actually taking this evaluation very seriously, and then I kind of took that mentality on with me when I approached another teacher who I couldn't get their learning style. And I've gone through this, and at one point I had even gone to the principal to talk about a teacher. And so there is an interest in students to go out and talk and evaluate their teachers, because with that certain teacher we did have 2 sides, and a lot of people were going in and out of the principal's office to discuss it. And so I feel like that evaluation system that could somehow incorporate the students at some point, but not really only rely on their input, would be very beneficial to this system.
Mr. Heller used an electronic or a paper format?
It was electronic. It was over the computer on the last day of the class after the final.
If I can make a suggestion, if you really want to know what teachers the students do not like, at the beginning of the year when all the schedules come out, ask the counselors to mark down whenever a student asks to change the class to the same class with a different teacher. I know I have done it in my 4 years at school at least once, and I know many of my friends do it where their friends tell them, oh, you have this teacher on your schedule, get out of that class, and they go and do it. And so if you mark that down, you will definitely see a trend for which teachers students purposely try to avoid. And maybe not as a reason to start the process of trying the level A and B, but maybe as a starting point of where to look as these teachers should be reviewed first as key points.
Hopefully we can get to them before it gets to that point. But I do think that, well, obviously you guys are very well spoken, but if we could include students who are not quite as motivated or as well spoken, I think having having an evaluation process, if nothing else, is then to flag and say there's a lot of students who are voicing concerns and saying I'm having trouble with this teacher, and maybe there's a learning style issue, maybe there's other things, but it certainly would, I think it would benefit the administration as well, and you can speak to this if you'd like, to see where to look first.
Like anything else, this is not a simple issue. It's interesting the number of adults that I've talked to who 20 years, 30 years later love the teacher they hated the worst. Maybe you've heard of that too. And it's an issue of learning styles. Sometimes you can pick up on a learning style. Sometimes your brain just doesn't work that way. And it's not maybe that they're a bad teacher, but you just, for you, doesn't work. So there's a fine line there. Interesting, but I'm glad that you will look into that. It seems worthwhile to me. The only other question I had was how much is education reform legislation going to change the way we evaluate teachers? I know there's committees being formed that are going to be going out and doing some work. Has SAI talked about that, what they predict the changes might be?
I think it's just in its infancy stages from what I've seen, and it's probably going to be tied somehow to the teacher compensation thing, and it's probably going to be years before something's finalized, so. I don't know if you've
Yeah, the
seen
only
anything
comment
different.
that I think I would add to this whole conversation is that the teachers' organization, the teachers, the DEA is very involved in the evaluation process. So they have their hand in this too. So it's a collaborative effort. It's not a top down. This is the way we got to do it. Evaluate, you're out kind of thing. So I think everybody here needs to understand that they certainly play a leg in this evaluation system.
I would say that they've also been very supportive of the Tier 3 plans, and they sit around the table with us as well, whether it's Toby Payon, who's the UNISERV director, or one of the building reps. We've included them in all of the meetings, and they always say that we need to do a better job of using that Tier 3 system for our teachers that are not able to perform and meet the standards, so.
Any additional questions? Director Crum.
I appreciate your comment, Bill, because I was sitting here thinking that the entire time we were having this conversation about student involvement, I think that would have to be an agreement between the union and the district to do that sort of thing. You would have more flexibility with students being involved with administrative evaluations. In fact, in the late 90s, we used to have what we called 360 evaluations, where students were asked also to, there was, at least in the schools that I was at, the 5th grade students were identified, like 10 students, by the 5th grade staff, cross-section of students, and they would come in and have a conversation with the principal and give their input as to what their thoughts were about the principal. And we would record that and turn that into the central office. So
parents too.
Parents were involved in the principal evaluation, teachers, support staff, everybody involved. So it's much easier with administrators to do that than I think with your teaching staff.
Anything else? Director DeFoe, I think. I've got a few things. Director Sherwood, I think, is the one that actually requested this discussion item. And I know he would be asking some questions, probably in ways that I might not be able to. But as I think about all of this, and I think about the kind of the icons that you presented there, where you're kind of helping the teachers come up, and I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge that you're looking at the positive aspects of the teacher evaluation system. But then I was wondering a couple of things. How many, you've got to have an idea, how many Tier 3s do you get to in, say, the past year?
Last year?
Yep.
There were 3 that I know of.
3. And so are you saying, and that's 3 out of 1,600 teachers or so, is that about right?
1,550.
So what's that? That's not a very high percentage, and it's not consistent, certainly, with most industry averages when they look at what kind of problems do we have in our employees. And so I suppose we could look at it in a positive manner and say we're doing just an outstanding job. On the other hand, I think that our student board members wouldn't say that their time is being wasted if we've only got 1.5% or whatever that works out to of teachers that are getting into the Tier 3. And you would think that if teachers are wasting students' time, there would be something, they would be getting into that Tier 3 area, I would think. So then I started thinking, how do you measure the effectiveness of the teacher evaluation system? Again, going back in industry, we would look at a system and we'd say, well, how effective is the system? itself. And there's got to be a way to measure that. I'm curious if you can at least tell me what your thoughts are on the effectiveness of the evaluation, the teacher evaluation system.
Well, I'd say you bring up a good point. Have we measured the effectiveness? No. Are there pieces of it that could be changed? Probably. Off the top of my head, one thing that happened to me when I was at the building level is I would do, some things with meetings and talking to a staff member about some inconsistencies or some improvement that I thought they need to make, and then they would use the system to bid to another position in another building. Well, then it kind of starts all over. So that's something that probably needs to be addressed somehow.
I suspect there are a lot
That's
of...
a major concern.
What's that?
I said that's a major concern. I think every principal would tell you that. The minute you start tightening down the screws and moving that direction, just move out and go to another school. There's 1,400 jobs to choose from. And they'll have to start all, you got to discover me again, and it's got to start all over again.
Once they're at the level B position, they stay put. But in the level A or before that, if you're just having discussions and saying, there's a problem, you need to try and fix this, we're going to write a plan, I expect you to do this, that, or the other thing, they still have the right to move within the district.
Well, and I accept that. Oh, I'm sorry, were you going to make a comment?
Until we can link evaluation with student achievement, we can't say whether it's a good system or not, and we're a long way from doing that. The state was trying to do that. That's the reason we don't have a waiver, is the legislature was not able to link student achievement with teacher evaluations. We don't have that in a very strong way. So, that's what we do. That's the measure of our progress. That's how successful we are. And until we can make that, quantitative jump, we can't say it's much more than trying to just do the best we can to monitor and manage the egregious errors that we have in the system with teachers.
Well, and another big piece of it is getting better at hiring people, because if we do the best job we can at hiring people, we won't have situations of level 3 or tier 3.
I think, I'm sorry, Director Dickman.
I would just like to voice my disagreement that that's a good idea to tie student achievement to teacher evaluation. Not necessarily saying I'm just sometimes students have a harder time learning, and that's not necessarily their teacher's fault. And I think when we start assigning blame, that's when you lose the collaborative element, and then it's just tearing people apart as opposed to teachers trying to improve themselves. There are some teachers, yes, that would be better served going into different areas or different professions, but I don't think that having student achievement necessarily be the one goal, or at least depending on how we measure it, it can get into a very not so good area very quickly.
I think Director Kahlua.
Oh, no, go ahead. What's your thought?
I got to tell you that this is affecting me viscerally, this discussion. And I hadn't anticipated that as I prepared for this evening's meeting. But I think some of the student board comments have just, I can't even describe what has happened there, because when I think about, I go way back to the IASB training that we had, and it talked about how important teachers were, especially elementary teachers, trying to get what happens between 2nd and 3rd grade and all this stuff, and then 3rd grade and 4th grade. And to hear, I've never heard a student say that their time was being wasted. That was, to me, that was monumental. And I'm sure, again, that happens all over the place. But when I think about a district of distinction, and I'm not even that concerned about maybe the evaluations, I understand, I mean, the evaluations, we've got to do what the state says. We've got to work within our agreements that we have with whoever. But one of the things, and you mentioned, Deb, you mentioned doing better hiring. I'm thinking about whether it's hiring, retention, whether it's motivation, inspiration. Earlier, when the student board members were giving the superintendent report, and they were talking about how jazzed they were in their schools. You know, this is going on, that's going on. And so I'm thinking probably we've got to get to a bigger discussion, and we got to keep moving on tonight. But maybe there's even more we can do from the positive perspective, and not from a politically positive perspective, from a real, hey, we really want you to be the absolute best. We don't want, if it's at all possible, I hope we never hear that again. So I guess that's about the end of mine. I'm sorry, Director Kluwe, you had something.
Just thinking about this issue too, it concerns all of us. Obviously, it concerns the people that are in the classroom. I'm just wondering if, would you say that if principals had more of a say in what employees they chose to be in their building, that they would be unlikely to select Tier 3A individuals?
Absolutely, yeah, without a doubt.
But I guess I would also say from an administrative or person who's been a principal in a building that I, a couple of times in my career, had teachers come to me from another building and the principal said they were awful, and they turned out being best teachers. And so a lot of it to me is pairing the instructional leader with the teacher that, you know, we all are charged with many of the same things, but everybody has a different style. So a different style of teaching meshes better with a different style of administration. And we don't have that opportunity with the system that we have in place with bidding. So that's a constraint that we have.
Well, it's the same interaction that you mentioned between student and teacher. Sometimes you mesh, sometimes you don't. I'm just thinking of ways that we could not just wring our hands and say, oh my, it's too bad because somebody says we have to do this. I'm just wondering what we can do to change the fate of the classroom student who's stuck, and you're not the only student I've heard say that, have been stuck in a classroom for a semester or quarter with a teacher who is not getting across to the student. Whether it's the teacher's fault or just a difference in learning styles.
And I'm going to say something, Director Kluwe, that I believe that this board has the authority to make a difference, and that we aren't relegated to simply accepting what the state says. The evaluation, yeah, we probably got to do that, but there may be some additional things that we can do, and you are always encouraging us to try to think big. And thinking big, I think, doesn't necessarily mean just compliance. So,
well, I will put in a board request tonight that the board meet on this issue and discuss what it is that we can do. I think that is probably the most positive solution that we will be able to come up with in this short amount of time.
Great, thank you. Director DeFalk, you've been really, really quiet. Is there anything you want to say before we move on?
Nope, just taking it in.
All right, any other questions, concerns, discussion? Whoa! Okay.
I just wanted to let you guys know, based even on my negative comment, that I'm sincerely grateful to be part of the Davenport Community Schools. I've learned tons. I just, you know, there's always going to be just those couple teachers, but I do want to let you know that I'm very grateful to be part of this community, and I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I'm being honest. So.
And I think that's something that we can all say. And I just had he was asking for ways that you guys can improve it, and it might be a building issue, but it's adding on to what Adam said earlier as well. I've had instances where I've had to drop second halves of classes because I didn't get a teacher's teaching style. And don't get me wrong, I'm a straight A student, but then the next year when I want to retake the class so I can learn it over again, I get the same teacher. And I just feel like that's not fair. Why should I have done it in the first place if I'm getting the same teacher? And I don't know how that would be resolved, but
I feel like a possible solution to this could possibly be teacher and student style screenings, because there are 3 learning styles. There's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. If we can differentiate which teachers have which style and then do a more in-depth class assignment system to see what student will get what teacher, if we can assign like-minded people into the teachers that can teach in that style, I feel like our results will be greatly increased.
The very best teacher would teach all of those styles to all kids. I've had teachers like that before.
Go ahead, Adam.
And if I can make the comment, I've had teachers before just in this past year that many of my friends told me to get out of the class when I first had, and I didn't have that opportunity. And the first day of the class, I realized that this teacher was pretty much speaking my language, and it felt like every other teacher was speaking a foreign language because they taught in the exact manner that I think in just the natural way I think. And so, while some teachers might not mesh with other kids, they certainly do. So I think a system like that with screening and evaluation to put you with teachers that might be the best fit that'd be wonderful.
Director Crumweedy.
Just one last comment. I look forward to more discussion of this board on teacher evaluation and administrator evaluation. But I also want to say and reiterate what some of our students just said. We have many, many fantastic teachers in this district and administrators, and I hope we don't forget that point. And we have a few teachers who need some extra support or direction. So I think we just need to have more conversation about it.
And I hate to prolong this anymore, but I appreciate the comments that Director Crumweedy just made, and I have to say that I've been working on a series of things, but especially trying to understand and trying to promote respect for teachers as well. And I appreciate your comments with regards to how many great teachers, great administrators, how great the district is. And it is. And I think that all of us, and earlier you were talking about respect in your schools. And I think that that's one of the things that in our community, and from the things that I've learned, I think that parents and students probably do a pretty good job of respecting teachers. I think that there are others that perhaps don't, and I think that teachers do deserve a lot of respect and admiration for what they do. And when you guys get as old as I am, you'll probably say, yeah, you know, some of those teachers were really pretty cool. All right, we're going to move on. Let's see here. Thank you very much for your review. We'll move on to policy review. Director DeFoe.
And I'm going to be quite brief because these policies were erroneously listed in the discussion. We've already discussed them, and in fact, the packet we received said policies for board approval. So I would expect those to be on the next full board meeting for approval.
Okay. Since they're in here for discussion, we've already discussed them, and there's no reason for them to be discussed anymore until they're in an action item.
Unless any of our board colleagues would have additional comment about any of them.
Are there any? They're in the discussion section.
Director Kluhl, I can tell.
Director Kluhl.
Well, I'm sorry. It looked like it was going to be a shorter meeting than it will be. But this is a short clarification issue for me. Policy 401.01, employment equity and non-discrimination, third paragraph. Need some clarification on the last sentence, which seems to be kind of thrown in. The sentence before reads, "The board shall consider the qualifications, credentials, and records of the applicants without regards to age, race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, ancestry, religion, disability, actual or potential parental, family, or marital status, or any other status protected by relevant law." Then the next sentence says, "In keeping with the law, the board shall also consider the veteran status of applicants." What does that mean?
I believe it means what it says, that applicants' veteran status would be given consideration when candidates are being vetted for interview. I will reiterate that this is a policy that's been submitted as a requirement of the Office of Civil Rights and ruling that we've had, and has been approved and isn't subject to change, to my knowledge, unless we reopen that entire process, which has been more than a year in coming.
Well, I just need to speak from the point of clarity because I need to understand this. And it's just like our issue with affirmative action, that we had a question for the Department of Education, the attorney that was here. Have we heard back from him on that? I think those are important issues that we need to understand if we're going to be able to consistently enforce our affirmative action plan. So I hope that he will follow up with that. If he doesn't, I hope that we will. This particular issue tells me then that if I'm a veteran, I will get a little more in terms of attention than non-veteran. Is that what this says to you?
Deb?
I know that working for the Department of Defense as a veteran, I got, and maybe Bob, you did too, you get 5 points extra for being a veteran.
The way I understand it is all things created equal. If it's a veteran and someone else and they have equal qualifications for the position, the veteran would be chosen over the other person. That's the way I interpret it.
It just seems to me that we're talking, this entire policy is about non-discrimination, but here we're talking about discriminating between veterans and non-veterans. It seems like this sentence would be better in the affirmative action plan than it would here. It just seems thrown in to me as an afterthought, as perhaps a legal requirement, but perhaps not in the right place. It just jars me a little bit. It doesn't seem to fit.
Well, we can check with Lane and Waterman, who are our counsels when it comes to civil rights, and see if there's some allowance to put it somewhere else, or if it has to be just that specific.
Yeah, as a veteran, I mean, I love to see this, but it just seems out of place here.
I can check with Lane and Waterman on that.
Thank you.
I believe that would be President Johansson's responsibility to contact Lane and Waterman. But
Okay.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I agree with Director Kluhl, but this particular policy has been aggravating, I believe, and there have been some edicts that have come down relative to this that I've been really, really frustrated with during this past year. And some of the language that I've had with our lawyers hasn't been particularly pleasant, but I believe in the end, we'll find out, but I think Director DeFau's general recognition that it's just kind of the way it is because this was written by the feds pretty much. So, but we'll find out and we'll clarify it. Adam.
Just for clarification, in all our packets, there is no period separating the last sentence from the second to last sentence. And since we all have taken English classes and know the difference between an A paper and an A- paper, we'd really appreciate that period.
I appreciate you pointing that out. I saw it, and I wondered whether that's the way the feds had written it, and that we got to keep it. But I suspect we can probably correct punctuation.
I would assume so.
So, but thank you for noting that. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on. Administrative reports.
Mr. President, I want to review a paper that I sent out to the board a week or so ago, the Greater Achievement Plan. Recollected, we had talked to one of the most serious challenges we have to deal with is the gap between our average producers on examinations, specifically the Iowa test, and many of our minorities. So this is an effort to begin to address that, at least at a very focused level, and that is in reading in grades 3, 4, and 5. So I put some people together that did some thinking about it. We included some principals. We came up with a plan. We widened our investigation a little bit and talked with other people. And what we've come up with is we've identified the lower 25% of achievers on the second. They're in the second grade last year, but now third, fourth, and fifth grade this year in reading. And each of them are going to have what we call a GAP, a Greater Achievement Plan. The basis of that plan will be that there's three elements. It's what is the school doing for the student, what is the community doing for the student, and what will the family do for the student. Each family will be called in, and they'll have counseling sessions. They will meet with the principal. They'll meet with people in the school. We will bring in assets from churches, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the YMCA to assist each of these students. Another element of this will be that the Greater Achievement Plan for each student is going to have to include more time at the school on reading. So it's not just a matter of having a nice plan that with some good words. It will actually mean that whatever's happening in the school right now, there needs to be more when it comes to reading. We will also have 4 Saturday academies, which will be for the family and for the students. These will be fun events. They'll be entertaining events. We're starting off with a gala on the 26th of October, and we've got a lot of interest from the community on how we can really make that an affair that the families will feel this is important. We're getting extra services. We want to be part of this. And again, the community is really formed up around this idea. So it is an attempt to do something different, to do something that's based on success that we've seen in different programs. We're putting it all in one place. I've challenged now the intermediate schools that what will they do? We need to do something for them, but it's really just trying to take a bite out of the elephant one at a time, because this is huge, it's big, and it's a start. But I just want to at least explain a little bit more than what you see here, and we'll keep you informed as we go along with the program.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the superintendent? Move on to board requests and reports. Director DeFau.
Student board member Hannah Harrington asked me to share that North High School's production of Moon Over Buffalo, which Jeremy mentioned, will run this weekend, November 18th and 19th at 7 o'clock and November 20th at 2. Student board member Carolyn Emery has a role, and Hannah is a technical member, crew member.
Great, thank you. Any additional reports or requests? All right, I've got a couple. One of the things, it was, I have 2 board requests here. I guess I'll read those first, now I'll go into some of my comments. First from Director Sherwood, and I prepared this for him based on his request. And it wasn't clear whether it's an agenda item or information request, but the agenda committee can figure that out. He asks, what would the process be for the district to consider managing the busing system itself? I also have a request from Director Kluhl. This is an agenda item, request a board agenda item to discuss what the board can do to promote the opportunity for every student to have the teacher he or she deserves. Oh, one of the things that I wanted to just caution the board as I thought about the Chromebooks. And the Chromebooks have incredible capabilities with respect to some of the things that they were showing us with communication, instant communication, looking over everybody's shoulder, and things like that. But I wanted to caution us, especially as we, in our communications, we have to be very, very careful about open meetings laws. And discussion of items, even in emails, can be considered violations of the open meetings laws. So just another reminder for us, the board, to be careful of that. I was taken also with the comments that the student board members made, all of you. And there was something different. And I don't remember, in fact, what the word was that was used by Director Kluhl, and I was trying to think of it during the evening because it's much more than articulate. Insightful, I think, is the word that comes to mind. And there were things that you were talking about, there were ideas that were like, wow. Things that I had never considered. And it happened all evening. I don't know exactly what it was, whether it is just a really, really bright group of people, or whether maybe it's the temperature, maybe it's that, you know, you're in the Davenport district. I don't know what it was, but I wanted to say thank you very, very much. All of you, you're a pleasure to have here, and it's very, very important. And you are making a difference in this district. So I want to say thanks a lot. With that, I would accept a motion. Oh, excuse me, Director Kluhl.
One last thought. For the agenda committee, would like to have a discussion item. Maybe it's too late, but considering IASB membership, the convention is coming up real soon, and that old truism that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu takes place because we're not members, and we will not be able to sit in on the legislative session, the General Assembly session. We have some important legislative issues which are going to basically go unrecognized. But if we were to join before we went, it would give us an opportunity to be at the table. So just for the agenda committee, if you would look into that and see if there's a possibility that we could, if the board decided that they are ready to join, that we could in fact join.
It's not too late, and I would accept that as a request for an agenda item. All right. With that, Director Crumwoody.
I just would like to congratulate Director Kluhl for all of his work last week with the Legislative Advocacy Ice Cream Social, and also Mary for all of her work in putting that together. And Director Kluhl, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to give a quick cap
Sure.
of the night and the event and the attendees?
Yeah, it was a grand event. We had probably 45 students, maybe 20 adults, even though it was finals week. We had some folks from Central who came over. Had 5 legislators that came, and we had, one of the things I did before the session was I looked up Ice Cream Social. Ice Cream Socials are kind of an old fuddy-duddy kind of a thing, and probably your generation will never do Ice Cream Socials, but they kind of stick in my memory. Maybe you will, but But here's the deal. What's the focus of the ice cream social? Well, you might figure, I looked it up, it's on the internet, it must be true, it's ice cream. But the fact is, it's also the social, it's the relationship building that is so important with ice cream socials. And that's why churches did it, to build relationships and bring people in and to bring, more tithing, whatever. But it was a relationship thing. So anyway, we had a good time. We continued to develop relationships with our legislators. Director Dickman was there, Director Crumwoody, and Director Johansson was there. Director Snyder was there, as was not Bill. Bill could not make it. Director DeFal couldn't make it. But it was a good time, relationship building, and we will build on that relationship building when we go to Des Moines on President's Day. So hope you guys can join us for that.
Thanks.
Now may I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned.